Hello and welcome to this special show, Charging Up India's EV Journey. India is racing towards a greener future and electric vehicles are at the heart of that transformation. The country aspires to become a global electric vehicle manufacturing hub by 2030. However, there's a structural challenge at the core. India remains heavily dependent on imported raw materials and lacks large-scale cell manufacturing capacity. Today, most Indian EV manufacturers still import 60 to 70% of their key components like battery cells, semiconductors and critical minerals. This leaves them vulnerable to global shocks. To secure the future, India must build a resilient, self-reliant EV supply chain, and that starts with developing a robust local battery ecosystem. The government has launched ambitious production-linked incentive schemes to drive domestic manufacturing of critical components. But is that enough? What else can India do? To discuss this, we are now joined by Jyoti Malhotra, Managing Director of Volvo Car India, Arun Malhotra, an auto industry veteran, and Uday Narang, founder and chairman of Omega Seeki. Thank you very much for being with us, gentlemen. Jyoti Malhotra, let me begin by asking you, how has Volvo really been dealing with the supply chain shocks over the last few years? And what kind of resilience have you now built into the system?
See, over the years since COVID, we have seen different type of disruptions, whether it was regarding, I would say, all type of supply chains, whether it's related to shipping and then material imports, all those things. And recently, as you know, specifically in India, these rare earth metal create a lot of havoc. Fortunately, so to say, for us, we bring our kits from abroad and assemble them in India. So directly we are not impacted, but yes, global supply chains have been very badly affected. And this can create a big hassle for us. But when we look into our future, one of the key things is we would like to do something here in India. And for that, we need the ecosystem to develop. So hence, I think what you are bringing to fore here is a very, very important topic. And it is a big challenge for us to be a self-reliant when it comes to making EVs in India.
Right. Let me also go across to our other panelists right now. Uday Narang, could you give us a sense of how the current supply chain challenges, especially around rare earth magnets, how is it impacting your company, the EV industry? And there is no sign of when these restrictions on rare earth magnets will be lifted by China.
I think, just to give you input, I used to be a hedge fund manager for almost 30 years. And so I've been involved in the commodity business before I got into the green energy, sustainability space. There is an absolute, issue on rare earths, but the problem is not from today. The Chinese own not just, the supply chain, but they also own the commodity. So they had a very long-term thinking on this subject. Now, obviously, recently, the issue with motors, with magnets has come up. And you've heard some of our major competitors talk about how it will affect supply chains. But I think for us, clearly, we could see this. We have worked on, magnetless motors. We are working on areas where we can replace rare earths. In the short term, we do have all to deal with this issue. But in the long term, I think, and one of the problems that I face is, why are we so reactive? Did we not know that the rare earths are all owned by the Chinese? Or the supply chain is going to be defective? I think in India now, we've got to be more proactive. We are talking about magnets right now. We have motors and magnets right now. What is next? So I think, for us, we had planned for it. But again, if this continues for long term, which I don't think, I think calmer minds will prevail. We have seen this in this journey. I think you'll find a solution. But I think in the short term, all of us will have to watch our supply chains. But what I want to make a point is that we should not be thinking, what is the next step? What are we going to be affected by? Whether it is semiconductors and controllers, you're talking about rare earths, but in the EV grade steel, copper, aluminum, there are many, many such issues that if we want to make this country green and clean, that we have to actually focus on building. And I think we've got to all work on building a village. It's not, my good friends at Volvo or some other companies, we've got to work together to be able to build that ecosystem where we're not, nobody's got a gun to our head about how we're going to do this.
Absolutely. Let me come back to you there. I'll get in Mr. Arun Malhotra at this point, auto industry veteran. Mr. Malhotra, If you look at successful companies in the EV sector, they manage to localize just about 30-35% of their components. By when do you think can India be able to have a local domestic supply chain for electric vehicle components?
Parikshit, I would like to be optimistic on that, but the reality is I don't think we are anywhere near it. It'll take 3 to 4 years. We've launched the Advanced Cell Chemistry Scheme, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme. They've announced in 2021. Until today, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, the outflow has been against 25,000 crores as 4,000 crores. Advanced Cell Chemistry is still to get to action. So I think our challenge has been at the moment is that whatever we've even thought of, the speed of from the pronouncements to the implementation is slow. Now, it could be the industry is a challenge, or it could be the bar has been raised very high. So that's one area which is a problem area, and I don't see quick solution indigenously. But I think what we need to do is, like we have the China Plus One strategy, we also need to broad base our partnership base. Whether we're talking of lithium, whether we're talking of rare earth, whether we're talking of semiconductors, and have clear, defined agreements with them. That means if China pulls the knob somewhere, we can go to the next person. Unfortunately, we have not looked at the entire value chain. And the rare earth element is something which is just in news 3 months back. Nobody was talking of it. To that extent, it's a challenging task. And I think the medium-term part is what we have got to do, what our schemes are, put them into action faster. And also the other thing which I think is important is involve industry, academia, and government together. So they need to synchronize the effort. We have got these centers of excellence like the Indian Institute of Science, the IITs. I don't think we are harnessing their potential ability well enough. So this is something which is a problem. But I think short-term, medium-term is build strong partnerships, be more proactive, look at alternative materials. That's what I say. But if you're talking of full self-sufficiency, 4 to 5 years down the line.
4 to 5 years down the line. All right. Let me now go across to Jyoti Malhotra once again. Mr. Malhotra, when it comes to electric vehicle batteries, currently they account for 40 to 50% of the EV cost. How do you think India can have a reliable supply chain of electric vehicle battery components and make sure that there is a strong domestic pipeline of EV batteries which can bring down the overall vehicle cost?
Yeah, so I think let's look at it this way. First of all, as I said earlier, I think this whole ecosystem right now is in its infancy, right? And we are we're still evolving. And as Mr. Uday said, I think we have been so far reactive. The first thing we need to do is that rather than being reactive, we need to be now proactive and not depend on the world if we want to really become self-sufficient. Having said that, I think what we really need right now, we are lacking capacity to produce advanced components, whether it is about the lithium-ion battery itself or power electronics or the intelligent drivetrains that lead to critical challenges. And I think all this is because, first and foremost, there is a high cost of production due to very limited scalability. So I think this thing can be solved at both ends. We also need to push demand. What China has done, if you really see, they have had a huge demand impetus, which leads to a better scalability when we start producing here. So you need to balance on both sides. So that is one of the very important aspects that needs to be taken care of. And then obviously there is also a shortage of skilled workers. If we really want to start taking care of these all important components, luckily for us, as per my understanding, almost 8% of global rare earth metals are estimated to be in India, and we are ranked number 5th when it comes to, I think, in terms of raw material. But I think we are not able to harness it because of various norms, and I think not being very proactive on how do we really use that. And then on top of it, there is also the challenge of absence of testing and validation centers. If we were to really develop these advanced cells and raw materials which are used in battery and cell production, we need the cost of production to come down, which can be done through scalability. We need to take care of that shortage of skilled workers, and that is where I think Mr. Malhotra was talking about. We need to work together with academia and ensure that we are able to bring the right talent and competence in out here, and then develop the testing and validation centers as well. So I think these are some critical thing that needs to be done when it comes to taking care for future. And obviously, there is also one more layer which is related to software. That is where we have an edge. We have I think engineers here who can develop software which are very, very critical to overall EV ecosystem. That is our strength, but we need to take care of the hardware side when it comes to batteries and
Right.
power electronics, things like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Uday Narang, if I were to ask you one area which is most important for our EV journey, for India's EV journey, would it be raw materials, technology transfer, logistics, or a transparent, consistent policy? What would that be?
Very, 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 very good question, and very, very relevant points. But you know what I want? I want a very stable policy. We've been in this journey for a long time. It's been almost 10 years. And I'll tell you what, you know what I want as a founder, as an investor, at Omega Seki, we've basically put our own money at work, whether it's Volvo or us or anybody. I think we need a policy that is stable. What we've had is policies, but it's been up and down. I think any long-term business, and I'm going to say we're never going to be like the US or Europe, but what we do want is a clear, stable policy. I think that will give us a roadmap. Listen, we know that 21 of the most polluted cities in the world is in our country. We know that in certain parts, we are now actually with the total cost ownership of EVs and two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and now it's coming in passenger, but even on the trucks, it is coming. Now, what we want is a clear policy, whether it's at the central level and the state level, and make sure that we stay the course. Because for us, there is no other option but to go green in this country. For the future, we're going to be the third largest economy in the world. We're going to be the third largest equities market in the world. But are we going to be the third largest, cleanest country in the world, which our future generations are going to need? And so I think a stable policy from the government is extremely important. But that doesn't mean that we are going to be leaving the government to do all the work. It has to be a public-private partnership. We all got to pitch in. I keep saying to everybody that this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. We're not going to achieve a complete nationwide. And let's not just talk about Delhi, Mumbai, tier 1 cities. Let's talk about tier 2, 3, 4 cities where we're going to take every part of this nation to be going green. And so I think if we can have the stable policy, it's important. The other points that you talk about are extremely important. Another thing that is very important for more electrification in this country is financing. Financing for electric vehicles is very high, and I think that needs to be worked on. There are multiple issues, and I think that is subject that also needs to be looked at.
All right, Mr. Malhotra, how ready do you think, while we have some large OEMs in the country which are global EV suppliers, EV component suppliers, but what about the readiness of our tier 2, tier 3 suppliers when it comes to the electric vehicle component supply chain?
So, Rishit, you hit the nail on the head. I think from an OEM perspective or from a tier 1 perspective, we are still at a fair advanced level. But tier 2, tier 3, there is a lot of work needs to be done. And clearly the hand-holding, whether from the OEMs or the tier 1, has to happen. But the way we look at it, the way EVs are made today, probably the tier 2, tier 3 rules, we have a, you can say, safety of time, or 2-3 years to catch up on that, is to start the journey. But at the moment, tier 2, tier 3 is not the, you can say, the showstopper. It is still has to be worked upon. But the bigger challenge, as Uday was mentioned, was having a stable policy and probably also having a technology agnostic policy. 3 years down the line, we realize that for buses and trucks, we don't need EVs, we need electricity, we need probably hydrogen. So stable policy, and this part of it. And I think this will go a long way to do it. The other part of it is, can we think of alternative research? We have got sodium-ion batteries, we're talking about solid-state batteries. Lithium, whether we like it or not, we'll be playing the catch-up game with China, and we'll still be dependent on them. The other technology is available. Can our Institute of Excellence focus on those from the medium and long term? So one is a short-term approach and a medium term, but one is a long-term approach, which has to start right now. As somebody said that we have the rare earth metals, which is 4th largest in the world. But that's a known fact. But have you done anything on that? Nothing. So short-term, medium-term, long-term policy altogether.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. This discussion on India's EV journey continues on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching Charging Up India's EV Journey, and we still have with us Jyoti Malhotra, Managing Director, Volvo Cars, Arun Malhotra, auto industry veteran, and Uday Narang, founder and chairman of Omega Seeki. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for continuing to be with us. Mr. Malhotra, coming to you, we've signed an FTA with the United Kingdom. It will be coming into effect once the UK Parliament ratifies it. That's going to lower the cost of components that go from India to UK, cost of vehicles coming from UK to India, but only in a staggered manner for a certain quota of vehicles. We'll see a Europe-India FTA also being signed very soon, possibly by the end of the year. Could you give us a sense of how these trade agreements help us with the resilient supply chain and bringing down cost, not just of EV components, but also of electric vehicles? Jyoti Malhotra, question to you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, as I said, I think the trade agreements are always good. We welcome these trade agreements because it's good to have a free trade. If we see it from this perspective, I think we were talking about how can we develop ecosystem in India and scalability. One of the important things is with trade agreements, then if we have, let's say, a free trade agreement with Europe tomorrow, like we have with UK today, I think our manufacturers here can freely supply and their scalability can really take care of that. And our own manufacturers, if we are producing EVs in India, like Mr. Uday is producing, he can sell not only here in India, but let's say now in UK and beyond once we have trade agreement with Europe and so forth. So I think it is a mutually beneficial policy to have trade agreements in place. It helps us in ensuring that we or our exporters, our producers here get an access to those markets. But we need to become competitive. Our markets will also open up. And I think it will create a free and fair trade between two countries or continents. And I think it is a very welcome stage. And we are looking forward that we can get into trade agreements, which can make all of us more competitive. And it will ultimately benefit consumers.
All right. Uday, if I were to ask you about your own challenges when you're trying to have a local ecosystem, a local domestic supply chain of your electric vehicle components, give us a sense of the kind of challenges, the hurdles you've encountered with your suppliers.
Well, as I said, it's been a long journey. This is a marathon and not a sprint. And I think we all, for me at least, this is not about Omega Seeki or Uday Narang. This is about India first. It's not about making India great again. India was always great. This path has been, a very, very tough part. When we first started, there were issues with battery supply chains, powertrains, motors, BMS. There were problems on everything. And as my good friend, Mr. Malhotra from Volvo talked about, I mean, there was not enough demand. Now, if there was not enough demand, there was not enough suppliers. Suppliers were saying, well, how do I make, a P&L? If the volumes are small, how much money do I put in R&D? So I think that journey changed. For me, the FAME 1, FAME 2, PMI e-drive helped propel in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, now in the one-ton trucks, and obviously the passenger vehicles started coming in. We had enormous problems. Prices of batteries, cell prices were $200 a kilowatt hour. Obviously, supply chains have increased. There's been so much that has changed in every step of the way. But I think this was a journey where we thought, look, no matter what, we've got to work towards, as a community, to build green vehicles. And if you look at the number of green plates that are coming out across this country, it is increasing every day. On supply chains, 100%. There was problems in getting localized motors, localized, there were problems in making sure battery cells were of high quality. There were issues with regard to on the telemetric side. There were issues on mechanical was sorted out, but electronics, there was always an issue on that. I mean, this has now changed considerably because, 7 years ago, the big boys and girls were not there. Yes, there were, but they were not enough. There was not enough commitment. Today, all the big boys and girls are in this game, including the startups. So it gave the runway for suppliers to come in and see a path where increased volumes can come.
Right.
And in the supply chain has got much, much better. India, in my view, is on a path of becoming a serious global force in the EV business. But we have to build it from ground up. And I think a lot of people said China does this, Japan does this. We've got to build it the India way. It has to be ethical, sustainable, scalable, resilient. And I think, for us, the supply chain, we have to work as partners. I keep coming back to it. We've got to build a village where all of us, if you look, where suppliers,
Absolutely.
OEMs, everybody charging infra, battery players work together.
Okay.
It's been a long journey.
Right.
I think we're going on the right way. Rome wasn't built in
Absolutely.
one
I
day.
think what the
You need to build
semiconductor
Rome
challenge
every day.
and now the rare earth magnet challenge has shown us is that we now need to map out our vulnerabilities and our dependencies on certain economies, certain countries very well for the next 15 to 20 years. Trade routes, natural resources are increasingly being weaponized, and we have to take a very long-term view of things. My question to Arun Mehrotra now. Mr. Malhotra, the government's PLI scheme for advanced chemistry cells, that's had limited impact. There are companies which are manufacturing cells right now locally, but it's at a very, very, I would say, initial level. Why do you think these government schemes have not really supported domestic EV manufacturing, cell manufacturing to such a great extent? The incentives are there, but why are we not seeing cell manufacturing take off at scale?
So, whether it's the advanced cell chemistry or it's the production linked incentive scheme, I think one of the challenges is from the time of announcement of the scheme to laying down the ground rules, and the ground rules being understood well by the government and the industry and the entire ecosystem, that takes time. What starts in 21 starts in 24. The other point is you need to have a graded method of raising the bar. If you think of 50% domestic value addition from day one or 30%, it's a challenge. Look at the advanced cell chemistry, the first benchmark which was put for the 3-4 companies which have got license, none cleared it. And they were big names, some of them. So there is somewhat, we also need to be pragmatic. We need to have, focus. One is the clarity of the policy, and the policy laid down into granularity has to be sharper, clearer, and faster. And second of all, have a graded system of raising the bar, and then have a continuous dialogue which is happening. So this is something which is a very important thing, and it's both for, fortunately, surprisingly, for electronics and textiles, it's worked much better. But in automobile, probably the complexity is much more. Putting from the ground level, raising to even reaching above ground level is taking a lot of time. So that's something introspection we need to do, and we need to have that focus really sharp. All
right. Now let's take a final set of questions with all our panelists before we wrap. Jyoti Malhotra, if I can begin with you. If you were to be asked one major bottleneck when it comes to the India EV supply chain, what would that be?
See, I think obviously it is our dependency on imports. I think we still need to import a lot, whether it is batteries or battery components, power chains, even chargers for that matter. So I think that is one big bottleneck. But having said that, another area of improvement would also would be related to taking care of gap in competency, skills, which are also a big gap that we see already. And I think we need to ensure that industry, academia, government, we all come together. And as you were saying, that it is important. It is a mission for the country. We need to look at taking care of it from all angles. And for that, one of the key things that is also required is a stable policy. Today, we have seen ups and downs. And not just from central government, although we have very strong EV policies in place. But then what happens is that the change in these policies, whether by central or by state governments, also have a very negative impact. as a multinational, when we are dependent on our headquarters,
Right.
when we talk to them, one of the things that worries everyone back at headquarters is also about the stability of our policy.
Okay.
So I think we need
All right.
a policy with a clear sunset.
Okay, we've run out of time, but thank you very much, Jyoti Malhotra, Arun Malhotra, and Uday Narang for joining us on this very important program on what will it take to have a strong domestic ecosystem of EV components. That's all we had time for on this special edition of Charging Up India's EV Journey. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.